Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Lincoln at the Theater. The subheadline says, His Interest in Plays and Players, Recollections of John T. Raymond. It says, "By the way," said Mr. Raymond to a Washington Star man, "Mr. Lincoln would often come down there at night and sit in the office. There's a point for you if you want it. He would come in, sit there for an hour and chat, and very often go for the stage entrance into his box, sit there quietly and unobserved, see the performance, and then go back home. He always expressed himself as delighted to get away from business and take an hour of recreation at the theater. The characteristics of the man were so noble, so simple and grand. He seemed to enjoy, when he came to the theater, his freedom from business and cares of state. I remember," he ran on, "one night we were playing Pocahontas, a burlesque, with Mrs. John Wood. In those days, when they caught a pickpocket in the streets here, the soldiers would placard him, 'This is a pickpocket,' and send him around the streets to the tune of Rogue's March, so the people would know him, and we were burlesquing that on the stage. Little Tad Lincoln, the son of the president, he is now dead, poor boy, a jolly little fellow, everybody liked him, came down very often with his father, and he was there that night. He was hanging around the stage, and for the fun of the thing, I put him in a ragged dress and set him on the stage in the mob in one of the scenes. Mr. Lincoln, who was in the box, saw the boy. Well, he laughed heartily and long, threw his hands up in the air, and let one of them drop over the side of the box. The audience saw the hand and recognized it. There was no hand in the world like Mr. Lincoln's, so long and bony. They recognized it and shouted for him. He had to come to the front of the box and bow. When Tad went into the box, Mr. Lincoln threw his arms around him, and the scene between the father and the boy was most delightful. The pleasure, the affection of the father was so intense, so spontaneous, and it was glorious to see him. Why, at that time, if anybody had wanted to seize Mr. Lincoln, they could have done it readily. He most always came to the theater alone. He would go to the box office and then pass on in. Sometimes he would stand on the stage a few minutes. He seemed to enjoy everything he saw, and was a most hearty laugher." "Did you have much experience with him as a storyteller?" inquired the reporter. "Oh, yes. I heard him tell lots of stories. I cannot remember the stories now, of course. He was always pleasant and cheery. He had a knack of illustrating his points by some comparison which was always effective. Everything he said had meaning in it, and was expressed so that it would bring its full meaning home to the most ignorant person. He was, if I can use such an expression, the most illustrative man I ever met in my life. He could illustrate by a jest or a little anecdote, which would have a volume of significance." "Puritanical," exclaimed the gentleman, who was now half Mr. Raymond and half Major Bob, as he turned around from the mirror at a suggestion of the reporter that some people thought Mr. Lincoln austere and puritanical. There was nothing of the kind in him. He loved life and its innocent pleasures. He was one of the most liberal and at the same time most thorough men in every respect. He was splendid company, and always jolly and pleasant on the stage. He was interested in everything he saw, and always had a kind word for everybody. He was friendly with all the actors. I think he used to entertain Hackett at the White House. He was a warm patron of the theater, and seemed to love it. When he came down, it always seemed to me that he wanted to get away and be alone. He would sit in his box, often when the audience had no suspicion that he was there." This article originally came from the Washington Star. This story came from the great state of Wisconsin, being reported in the Manitowoc Pilot of May 24th, 1883. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.